Hey, my friends, here with another video. Just gonna do some quick and dirty reviews. These are all the things I've read in just the last, 3 months or so, just to keep the channel active. Tell you about some books I read. Starting off, we had The Bass Saxophone by Josef Zarecki. Czech writer, but he lived in Canada for a very long time. Kind of one of the big reasons I kept this. I don't know if you can make that out, but little signature found in the wild. So just a little show and tell time. These like Lester, Oppen, and Dennis series. I don't know if you've ever seen these. I have a couple Calvinos in this series, and then kind of finding this one sort of prompted me to start looking for these a little more actively. It just seems like a very cool series. I think you know my love of like European and etc. These publishers that kind of publish real things in translation that are always cool. This Zarecki, I liked better. This is two novellas put together. One novella called Emoke, the other one called The Bass Saxophone, which we have here. Emoke was kind of about like this love triangle in which like a young man, but the girl was like very like pagan witchy, and but he was like just so enamored with her, and it was kind of like this other guy who was really into her as well, and kind of these the love triangle between them. I liked it okay. The second story or novella, The Bass Saxophone, I liked quite a lot. Basically about a young boy during Nazi Germany, and then kind of becomes really enamored with jazz, and he like ends up with this sort of a gypsy band in like a hotel, and they have a bass saxophone, and the guy who plays it is sick, so he can't play it, but this kid plays the saxophone, so he kind of gets joined into this ragtag band. It was excellent. Almost like just that aspect of like Nazi kids being into jazz, like very reminiscent of like the film Swing Kids, if you've ever seen that. It was great. That story in particular kind of gave me the vibe of Günter Grass or something from Tin Drum, especially like at the end when he's past the tin drum and is kind of like trying to be a little more regal and a man about town, when Oscar's he like grows up beyond the tin drum. So I will seek out more Zarecki. I know this isn't necessarily his, I think The Engineer of Human Souls is the one that gave him the most notoriety, but I will probably seek those out. It's good. Gogol's Wife by Landolfi. This was fantastic. I kind of found this because there was sort of another edition has like an introduction by Calvino, so that's kind of sort of contemporaneous with Calvino, so that's essentially why I sort of seeked him out. This is a collection of stories, very memorable. Almost as if Kafka had like a little more heart, almost like if Kafka was like trying to say something a little bit more. Not that Kafka doesn't, but these sort of had like angles and goals. The title story in particular, very surreal. I would say is the most Kafka-esque, but just Gogol's wife was this woman made of rubber, and like not even, just very, very strange and surreal. Very memorable one. I forget the title, but about like this woman locked in a castle and like running out into the snow to like give a letter to like a horseman riding by. Very evocative. That was excellent. There's one about these two sisters who live together, and they have a pet monkey, and the monkey like escapes and is mimicking like a church service, and so they decide they have to kill this monkey because it's like acting blasphemously. they're very stories with a very strong angle. Thankfully, I do have another title of his, Words in Commotion, something like that. Very excited I picked that up because this was so surprisingly excellent. This is one of the best things I've read this year. If you ever see this Landolfi, if you like Kafka, if you like Bartle May, if you like, not maybe even Borges, like that, those kind of taut short stories that are just like inventive, I would highly hold these amongst them. So it was awesome. Okay, next up I have three kind of contemporaneous things. Someone, said to me recently, like, do you read any new books? Well, okay, here's three. Three books that are essentially brand new. I think these are both 2024. This was not too long ago. The feature by Catherine Leroux. I think all three of these I'm going to be like semi-critical about. Leroux, very cool concept. Basically, this is set in a francophone, semi-post-apocalyptic Detroit. Like an older woman moves to this Detroit, and she is kind of searching for her granddaughters. Her daughter was an addict and died, and so she's moved to this house trying to uncover how her daughter died, how and where her granddaughters went after this death. So very interesting world building in kind of like a post-apocalyptic Detroit, but also kind of bizarrely misses the mark in some cases because it's very realist for a lot of it, and then all of a sudden there are moments of like magic that like peer into it. Tonally, it didn't. Was it real or is it magic realism? It gives and takes and decides when it, like, that magic exists and then when it doesn't. There's these instances of these feral children. I don't know if you've ever seen Mad Max, the Terror Dome one with Tina Turner. I couldn't help but see like those feral children from that film in this book. The way she treats them, just no kids act this way. Somehow society's fully deteriorated, but there's also like working governance. The world didn't coalesce or wasn't explained well enough, how the way these children were characterized as like not even a generation. They're like acting like this like noble savage society. I don't know. The feature by Leroux was fine. Similarly, Beautyland Bertino by Bertino. The plot of this one really intrigued me because I loved Chalky by John Wyndham so much. In this case, it's about a little girl that is getting faxes from like an alien entity or an alien group, and so she's, as like the posit is, she's trying to send her observations about human society, humanness, to help this alien entity understand humanity. But as the book goes, you know, potentially like this might even not be real. This might be just like a mental posit of hers. There is a weird misandry that permeates the book, which was like a very, very strange thing to experience. Yeah, like unwelcome. And oh, the ending, terrible. Oh my god, we don't need another banana fish ending ever again. Started off so strong, but read Chalky instead. No One Is Talking About This by Patricia Lockwood. This was definitely the strongest of the bunch. Very much in the head of an influencer, and just the relentless cynicism of this book was like all encompassing on the reader. It's pretty smart in how much of just relentless bombardment of social media and meme culture and like the vapidness of it just like washing over people, and then from that feeling of where are we now. It kind of like, I don't know, I would almost compare it to, you know, the work of Douglas Copeland, who similarly writes within like a 21st century culture of just endless ads, endless internet, endless memes, like just things permeating us. You know, I think it is kind of odd that like a lot of novelists don't, you know, treat these things that we like deal with daily as part of literature. So like I really appreciate her take, but I mean, maybe the point is that it's like this bombardment of like this type of internet culture really does chip away at humanity. Maybe that is the message of the book. But whereas those same characters in Copeland novels, they recognize there's like that disconnect and they're trying to like reconcile it. Whereas like that kind of seeking of reconciling was felt absent here. Maybe pretty pertinent to our epoch at this moment, but a very cynical and humor within it. I was like, it was too cutting without like a soft edge. So no one is talking about this by Lockwood. I don't know, was that was that a review either way? I can't really tell. Back to a very strong one, The Continuous Catherine Morton-Hoe by Compton. This is in like an NYRB edition. Just another prime example of NYRB curating things so wonderfully. Like every time I seek out a lot of like the sci-fi titles from NYRB, and they have yet to disappoint. Compton here in particular. This is written in the 70s, but really foresaw, and I think it's set in the 90s, but foreseeing the future of reality television. So this is kind of in this posited, speculative world. They live in like a society that's so starved for, like, basically because there is like disease and like death has sort of been washed away. So this woman, Catherine Morton-Hoe, has a terminal disease, and so because of her, that uniqueness of the tragedy of dying younger, it becomes this fixation for reality television. And it kind of the two characters of her and following through the eyes of her cameraman, who has like cameras fixed in his retinas to follow her and like secretly follow her and film her during her final days. And to me, this book says a little bit more about kind of juxtaposing it to what we had before, the like what that sort of media saturation does to a person, what it does to a society, and kind of like your need potentially to carve out like a humanity outside of it. Continuous Catherine Morton-Hoe by Compton. Quite excellent, very moving. Would recommend. And then I just read Double Hook by Sheila Watson. I just did an event at U of A, and I read and talked in this room that housed the Sheila Watson collection. And there's this photo, I'll show it now, of Sheila Watson smoking a cigarette, and she was such a badass. She looked incredible, but I'd never read this book, so basically this connection I now have with Sheila Watson in this room. I had to read her book, The Double Hook. This is her most well-known and lauded title. For those of you who are not Canadians, this series, the New Canadian Library, is kind of an integral piece of a part of our heritage. They've republished like a ton of just like Canadian classics, and often criticized because Canadian lit is so often about survival and how harsh the land is, and like life is brutish and short, and we just can merely hope to overcome it. And this book is kind of like that, but almost compared to, say, Great Gatsby or something, just how taut the language is, in a lot of ways seemingly like edited into oblivion in some ways. Like basically any superfluous sentence is just like stripped away, so the prose is like so tight and sharp. And it's about basically like a murder and death, like in this small British Columbian community, and the way they all deal with this tragedy. A hard one, because it's just like, boy, Canada, like especially from this era of Canadian literature, is just like everything is brutal and hard, and nobody has any joy in their life. And yeah, that's a brutal sentiment to continually read. But Sheila Watson's take on it is taut and like sharp and good, but it was like a difficult confrontation of a novel. So there you go. And then kind of related to that, I've got a couple books from friends. So I have two of Ryan Fitzpatrick's books of poems. I started with Sunny Waste as most recent. Excellent. Reading, being from Calgary, it's very easy to be cynical. Being from Alberta, it's very easy to be cynical. And this is a book that addresses a lot of the problems with Calgary and Alberta, and like living in like a blindly capitalist, oil-centric community. And so like Ryan's take on it, it's like there is that like anger and hysteria, and just there's sarcasm in it, but the amazing part is like it doesn't delve into the cynical. So it's like it felt like a very poignant book in reading it, because it had so much to say about that. It really voices that, like, actually viewing the problems, but not necessarily delving into cynicism, because it's often treated with humor and treated with, like, the concern, right? So this is out on Invisible. I thought this was very strong. And his other one, Coast of Mountain Foot, which was written as a response to George Bowering's Rocky Mountain Foot. So I've actually just read these side by side to kind of juxtapose them, because this book was written in response to the Bowering title. I wouldn't say I liked it as much as Sunny Ways, but it felt vital, because it was a book very much about, so Rocky Mountain Foot was George Bowering, well-known Vancouver poet, lived in Calgary and Alberta for a time, and then sort of wrote about Calgary and Alberta very, he seemed very critical of this place, and often rightly so, understandably so, but at the same time, he was juxtaposing it with, the actual zombie apocalypse that can be Vancouver, as characterize it as some kind of Xanadu, and often disparage this one city without recognizing it in the other. It was odd. But, I just want to read this one passage, just like especially one that struck me so profoundly. This is the one passage I've been thinking about so profusely. The city of narrow stores, ruled by preachers selling oil, extracts unreasonable love from its victims. And such a sharp way of describing Calgarians, like people who have the most unreasonable love despite like our unknown victimhood of living in this society, in this government, in this like this oppressive world. You know, and that was written in what, 68? You know, I don't know how long is that, 60 whatever years. So with Rocky Mountain Foot being about a Vancouverite responding to living in Calgary, here we have a Calgarian responding to Vancouver, being a Calgarian living in Vancouver. I can see the need to kind of write that response, because I think at least Ryan's take of Vancouver is not necessarily, he's not disparaging Vancouver for what it is. I think he's like disparaging a lot of being a student, being poor, and recognizing those similar things Canada-wide. In some ways, like, I see this book as a like time capsule of, you know, his time living in Vancouver, whereas you know, Sunny Ways I see as very much speaking to the now. So if you find this, I would recommend it. And then to just highlight another friend, I have Sam Jones's new book, Attic Rain, basically a poetic take outlining what it's like to have obsessive compulsive disorder and dealing with it and trying to evoke it poetically. To me, a lot of the most kind of charged parts were these, she would do these, I don't know if you could make these out, these sort of maps of the back and forthness of checking plugs and checking taps, and like these multiple maps, almost like if you remember those like family circus maps, you know, going all over the yard and whatever. These same type of maps of continually checking the appliances and the plugins and the switches often gave me a lot of insight into that mindset. And a special shout out to whoever laid out this book. There were some incredible moments. There were some great moments of musical notation permeating the text, but kind of the most interesting pieces are when like two stanzas kind of merge each other, kind of like merging of thought, and like the you know, the voices overlapping and the concerns kind of converging on each other. So these moments where these two stanzas kind of like merge into each other. So it happens a number of times in the book, and yeah, what a feat to have typeset it. So pretty cool. I enjoyed this quite a lot. There you go, some quick and dirty reviews of some things I'd read in the last little bit. Thank you for watching. Read books. I know this is like the most varied collection of readings I'm going to have, but that is what, you know, that is what's fun as a reader, to seek out the hidden gem, to seek out both what's happening in your neighborhood, what's happening, like, you know, in the book news, but also just going to a book sale, a thrift store, a used store, and finding something that everyone's forgotten about, no one touts, and finding a gem in there. It's very exciting. Thanks for watching. Hopefully I'll be making more videos in the years to come. Farewell.